What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we are going to be going over pandas, pandas, whatever you want to call it, which allows you to format the data in a nice looking table and query the data so that you can draw statistical conclusions from that data. Pandas is a very popular library for doing data science, and I'm going to show you the implementation today in Visual Studio Code. The process that we are going to be doing is first importing the library, then we're going to import a data set for reading, format that data set using pandas, and finally we're going to query that data. Let's get right into it. So hopping into Visual Studio Code, the first thing we're going to do is create a file. You can just double click on that home page and it'll bring you to an untitled file. I'm going to call it pandas python. Command S, Control S, depending on what operating system you're on, and I'm going to save it as pandas python, and I'll just save it to my desktop. Also, this is in Python, so make sure that your format is in Python. We want it to be a .py file and not a .txt file. Once we have our Python file created, we can just do import pandas as PD, and if you're getting errors for this, then go to your terminal and do pip install pandas. Once that's all squared away, I'm going to import Tkinter's file dialog so that we can get the file path of any CSV file that we are going to import for this data set. To make things straightforward, I'm going to have a main function, and first when the program starts up, we're going to ask the user to give a file. I'm going to be brushing over this, but if you're confused on how to actually implement this method, I would go back to my Tkinter advanced tutorial. I give a way more in-depth tutorial on how to use file dialog to choose a file path, but I'm going to do ask file equals file dialog dot ask open file name. Depending on which file formats you are opening and manipulating, you should error check the end of your file name to make sure that it is not maybe an image file or an executable. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to assume that the user opens a CSV file. So next we're going to do CSV file equals open ask file. This takes the path of our selected file and opens it. And now we're going to get our data frame variable in the mix. So we're going to do df equals pd dot read CSV, and we'll put CSV file in it, and we need to give it a delimiter. What a delimiter is if you look in between every piece of data, there is a comma. So a delimiter basically says what separates each element of the data set from the next. So in this case, our delimiter is a comma, so we're going to put delimiter equals comma. Make sure to save as you go. You don't want to lose your precious data. Not all of the rows are showing, and this is because pandas on default only shows 10 rows max. So it usually shows the first 5 and the last 5. To change this, what we can do is we can do pd.set underscore option, and we could do display dot max underscore rows, and we could set this value to none. I could have opened up this file in a text editor, but opening it up in Python allows us to query the data for valuable information. The first query that we are going to do is we're going to query for everyone that is female. So if you see, we have the sex column right here, and it goes male, female, male, male, etc. But I'm only interested in seeing the females, so we're going to do df equals df.query sex equals female, and now it's going to show us all of the females. Also, there's more columns than this, but you can't see them all. The way we can solve that issue is we can go to pd.set option display.max columns, do none. So if I run it again, it will show us all of the columns. The tricky thing with showing all of the columns, especially in this small terminal, is that you will get some clipping. And what I mean by that is there's not enough room to show all the columns. It's going to put the remaining information of a row in a whole new data set. The good thing about proper data sets is that they'll have indexes. So if you see here at index 83, we have Nixis Vanessa at example. If we see at index 83 here, we have Douglas Reese. So these two rows are part of the same row. In our data set here at 84, we have Douglas Reese, Nixon, Vanessa. So even though our data is split up for formatting purposes, we can still relate the data to each other based on its index. And trust me, if you're working with large data sets, you're going to want to get familiar with the indexes. You're going to rely on them a lot. Let's query this data further. Let's say maybe we want the index to be greater than 40. If our index is greater than 40, then it's going to show all the rows after row 40. And here we are, starting with row 40 and going down. So with Pandas's query function, you can compare both qualitative and quantitative data. Like right here, I'm comparing a number, but in the previous example, we compared names, or I guess categories, because we did sex and female. The cool thing about queries is that you can stack them as well. It's usually not enough to query data based on one factor. Like saying index is greater than 40 isn't going to really get you anywhere, but when you couple it with things like their sex is female and etc., you can start drawing conclusions based on the query data. So after I've done df.query, I can also do another query on top of the index is greater than 40. So let's put our previous query in here as well. We're going to put sex equals female. A good practice for queries as well is that you want to have your double quotes surrounding the entire argument, while you want to have single quotes surrounding your string literal. And what I mean by this is when you say you want a column to equal something, you want to put that word that it equals in single quotes. With numbers, you don't need to use string literals. You can just put in the quotation marks 40, but when I do sex equals, I do single quotes to put female. I have female in the single quotes, and the whole expression is surrounded by double quotes. If I run this double query, open up the CSV file, we have rows after 40, and they're all females. You may notice as well in our CSV file, we have columns that are 2 words, such as job title right here. Now, if you tried already doing this, you might see that you run into an error. If you just put job title in the double quotations equals, let's say, games developer, you will get an error because it doesn't understand what title pertains to. It just reads job. Pandas is a very old library. This library was originally built to just handle single word columns, but it's been updated since it first came out. You can use columns that have more than one word. To do this, we would simply use these guys right here. And if you're confused on what this key is, look at the escape key and look right underneath. If you press the tilde without using shift, just normally, you will get this symbol, which is a backtick. This basically just joins the 2 words and allows Pandas to read it as one word. So if we do df equals df dot query, and we can say job title, there's a lawyer right here. And I want to see if this is the only lawyer in our dataset. Dave Farrell is our lawyer. Let's also throw another lesson on here, and we're going to use an or statement. So you can use either this single line, or you can use the word or, and it should produce the same effect that if you run it with multiple queries, it should bring up either of those queries. So we're going to open people.csv, and it opens both. Even though games developer in the job title, this is last name equal to Terrell, and even though this last name is Farrell, which I think is kind of crazy, they almost have the same last name, he is instead a lawyer, so he satisfies this condition of job title equals lawyer. That is how you use Pandas in Python and how to query data. This is a very general overview, and just wanted to give you guys some skills on how to query your data in Python. You don't have to use a CSV file. You can use many other different types of files, but I chose to opt for a CSV. Honestly, I just like how CSV files are formatted. They're very clean and easy to read. I would encourage you guys to try this with many different file formats and get comfortable with them, because companies would love to see, if you have this on your resume, being able to program with Python and how to query data with it, because everyone's learning SQL, everyone's learning Excel, but if you have set in stone a programming language that you know how to analyze data on, you're going to be set apart. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something today, and if you did, make sure to drop a like. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Keep learning. Stay humble. Peace out.